Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're going to address the death of Warhammer 40,000 as we know it, as well as what and why I'm quitting. But before we do, this video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. That's right, I've worked very hard to stay positive. Wait until we had the full picture for 10th edition 40k. And now that we have all the index rules and points, I can officially say Warhammer 40k as we know it is dead. It's a completely different game now. Many will say they didn't want it. The new edition, the rules and points changes, but that's the thing. Change often comes when we least expect it, and seems uncomfortable at first, but this discomfort leads to growth. And like they say, if you're not growing, you're dying. With 10th edition, like everyone before it, comes many questions. What is good now? What is bad? Can I still use my favorite faction? My favorite units? Will I be able to win? Which brings us to what and why I'm quitting. As many of you know, I've been playing Warhammer my whole life. Started with Rogue Trader and never looked back. There have been many big changes along the way. Many times I've heard 40k or one of the other Games Workshop games' newest edition has killed the game. This time though, this time seems different. As many of you know, I'm very critical of Games Workshop. I consistently point out their flaws and provide reasonable solutions. This time, however, is no different. I'm cutting the toxic part of my favorite hobby out. I'm quitting all Warhammer 40,000 related groups. I have amassed a huge collection of Warhammer 40k armies, and with each faction comes one or more online groups, which for the most part have been fun communities, fellow collectors, gamers, and nerds. But lately, these resources, these communities have become toxic. I no longer get any enjoyment or value from them. Every faction community has become toxic. I can hardly spend a few minutes looking at cool paint jobs or awesome conversions without getting bombarded with complaining, heated arguments about why a particular unit, model, or even entire faction has been ruined. Somehow, even though the rules have only been out for days, and a handful of people have only played a handful of games, somehow the internet has ruled. Everything is officially ruined. All my plastic toys are terrible now, and everyone else's are amazing. The hobby is no longer about how cool the models are, how well they're painted, and the game is definitely not about having fun, not even a little bit. And if I didn't know any better, I might just believe the complaints. No, I'm not quitting Warhammer 40,000. Just exiting the groups. I did not announce my departure, so they will never know I'm gone, and that's fine with me. So rather than perpetuating the negativity, I'm going to do the opposite. Encourage you to do the same. Cut out the negativity, and instead of looking at this puzzle and proclaiming it's impossible to solve, let's have some fun and do it together. Let's beat Warhammer 40,000 10th edition. We'll take a look at one of the scariest combos and how to beat it. But before we do, I want to thank you all with our first giveaway. To celebrate 10th edition, 10,000 subscribers, and the awesome community that we've built together. I know we're not quite there yet, but let's have a little more fun before we arrive. My first army was Eldar, or for you new people, Aeldari. I started back in the Rogue Trader days, and it's still one of my favorites today. So let me know down in the comments section, what was your first army, and what is your favorite today? Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, and you hit the like button, and you'll be entered for a chance to win a unit from your favorite faction. Make sure to keep tuning in, so you can find out if you're the lucky winner. And there's going to be lots more giveaways on the way to 10th edition and 10,000 subscribers. So now that the giveaway is officially underway, let's unbreak the scary Aeldari combo. So one of the combos that was officially identified as the Boogeyman is for the Aeldari faction, and essentially just uses a couple of the basic components of the game. It starts with a support weapon platform, the army faction rules, and a Farseer. So as you can see, the Farseer is 65 points and the support weapon is only 85 points. So we're talking about a 150 point combo. And what exactly can you do for 150 points? Well, we'll start with the faction rule for Aeldari, Strands of Fate. If your army faction is Aeldari, at the start of the battle, make a Strands of Fate roll by rolling 12 d6. If you wish, you can then re-roll all of these dice, but if you do, roll one less d6. You can continue re-rolling all of the dice in this manner, rolling one less d6 each time you do, until you're satisfied with the results rolled, or until you have only a single d6 remaining. When you're satisfied with the results rolled, these remaining dice become your fate dice for the battle. These results cannot be changed or re-rolled further unless a rule specifically states otherwise. Keep your fate dice on one side. This is your fate dice pool. Before making a dice roll for a model or a unit from your army with the Strands of Fate ability, if you have one or more dice in your fate dice pool, you can use one of those fate dice to do so. To do so, select one of these fate dice to substitute that dice roll. The dice that is being substituted is not rolled. Instead, the value of the selected fate dice is used as if it had been rolled. This counts as an unmodified dice roll for the value for all rules purposes. Each fate dice can only be used in this way once. After using a dice, remove it from your fate dice pool and roll all remaining dice. After using a fate dice, remove it from your fate dice pool and roll all remaining dice that are part of the dice roll, if any. You can use fate dice for any of the following types of dice rolls: advance roll, battle shock test, charge roll, damage roll, hit roll, saving roll, or wound roll. So realistically, at the start of the game, you're going to roll 12 dice, and on average, you're going to get 2 of each result: 2 1s, 2 2s, 2 3s, 2 6s, etc. So in many cases, the high dice rolls are what you're looking for, and now with the new rules changes, crits or 6s are very valuable in certain instances. So that's what you'll be looking for. So let's assume you get an average roll, maybe slightly better, and you roll 3 6s. So now, for the entire game, you have 3 6s that you can substitute in at any time for one of these rolls, on top of a bunch of 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, and 1s as well. There's also some other ways that you can roll additional dice or modify those dice rolls, so let's take a look at our Farseer to see how we can combo that. So here we have our Farseer. He's a Psyker and a very powerful part of the Aeldari faction, and we see that he has the faction rule Strands of Fate and the Branching Fates psychic ability. So this is one of his psychic powers, and it says once per turn, when you use a fate dice to substitute a roll made for a model or a unit within 12 inches of a Farseer model from your army, one model from your army with this ability can use it. If it does, the result of the fate dice is first changed to a 6. So basically, once per turn with one Farseer, you can choose a unit within 12 of that Farseer, and you can change a fate dice that you were going to use, and we're just going to change it to a 6. So if there's 5 turns in a game, that's 5 extra 6s, plus the 3 that we started with. So we potentially have, on average, 7 or 8 6s that we can use throughout the game. So now we're just going to jump over to one of the units that we can use for this combo or something particularly strong, and that's our support weapon platform. So we're going to pay attention to our first ranged weapon for the support weapon platform, the D cannon. And the D cannon has blast, devastating wounds, heavy, and indirect fire. So realistically, of these rules, the one we're focusing on is devastating wounds, which essentially means that if we roll a 6 on our wound dice, the damage from that attack becomes mortal wounds instead of regular wounds. So in this case, we have a 24-inch range weapon with a D3 attacks, ballistic skill 3+, strength 16, AP -4, and damage D6 +2. So if we wanted to maximize the output on this weapon, and we're familiar with the Aeldari rules, which allow each unit to reroll 1 hit or wound roll per turn, let's just assume in this case that we roll an average on our D3 attacks and we get a 2. So we have 2 attacks hitting on 3s, and let's just say that we hit with both of them. So now we have 2 strength 16 hits. So against anything toughness 8 or less, it's going to be wounded on 2s, and anything with toughness 15 or less is going to be wounded on 3s. But what we're looking to do for this ultra combo is to proc the 6 to wound so that we can get our devastating wound. That way, even though we have AP 4 on this, if we're shooting at a target with, say, an invulnerable save, we can bypass that invulnerable save and do mortal wounds instead, which in general are much harder to ignore. So we're not even going to give our opponent an opportunity to save those wounds. Instead, we're going to take 2 of our Strands of Fate dice. We're going to use 1 from the Farseer and turn it into a 6. And then we're going to use 1 of our existing 6s so that both of our hits will now have wounded on 6s and proc the devastating wounds. So that is going to turn our D6 +2 damage from each of those hits into mortal wounds, which is going to give us on average 3 to 8 mortal wounds per hit, which is going to be a total of 6 to 16 mortal wounds. And as a matter of fact, if we really want to use up all of our resources on a very key target, or specifically on an early turn to try to dish out as much damage early as possible, maybe we want to turn our wound rolls to 6s, and then we want to also turn our damage rolls to 6s. So we'll spend 1 6 from the Farseer, plus 1 of our regular 6s, plus 2 more of our regular 6s, which is all of them in this instance, plus our Farseer, and we're going to do auto wounds on 6s, and then we're going to do damage maximum with 6s. So we're going to do a total of 16 mortal wounds, and all it cost us was 3 6s from our dice pool, plus 1 from the Farseer. So obviously, this is a lot of resources to be using in a single turn, but we're assuming we're using it to kill a key target. And 16 mortal wounds is enough to do quite a bit of damage to a specific target, a key target, and possibly even remove it from the game. And while I understand this looks very, very strong to people, I think what they don't realize is how much of your full game resources you're using up on this single shooting attack. So sure, you did 16 mortal wounds, but you used up all your 6s from the dice pool and your Farseer's special ability, and all of that assumes a perfect scenario where you have all of those at your disposal and you have a key shot on a key target. And obviously using the indirect fire rule means that it's much more difficult for people to hide from you. But that's just it though. Like everything has strengths, it also has weaknesses. So you use up a ton of resources on this if you have the perfect scenario where you can unload all of this damage on a key unit or a key vehicle. But what people are forgetting is that this is all taking place within range 24 inches. And the support weapon platform only has a movement of 3. So even if this thing is centrally placed in your deployment zone at the start of the game, your opponent just has to stay 27 inches away to not be hit by this, because your effective move is 3 and your range is 24. So your effective threat range is only 27 inches. So it's very easy to stay outside the effective threat range of these units. Well, but what if somebody is playing cheese and they take 3 of these and they just line them up at the edge of their deployment zone, one on the left, one on the right, and one in the central. So they can essentially pull this combo off anywhere on the board within 27 inches of one of those 3 points. So of course that's going to make it much more difficult to avoid, but oftentimes the threat is more intimidating than what actually happens. Because would it be beneficial to your army to do 16 mortal wounds to a target on the first turn? Of course. And of course you could potentially eliminate a key target from your opponent's army. But you'll have used up all 3 of your 6s for the entire game, plus your faction ability from your Farseer. So now for the entire rest of the game, you only have that 1/6 from your Farseer every turn, which limits the output of the entire rest of your army. And of course you don't need to use the Strands of Fate dice to proc devastating wounds. It can naturally proc on its own. But in all reality, you're rolling an average of 2 shots with each of these per turn. So even if you take the max of them, which is 3, that's going to give you on average 6 shots a turn. And even if we say we hit with all 6 of them, and then one of those hits is going to be a 6 to wound, that's still only going to proc devastating wounds on 1 of your 3 units per turn. So sure, it's a strong ability, but it's not nearly as strong as people are making it out to be. And on top of that, a lot of times people are thinking about things from the old edition and trying to compare them to things from the new edition. So for instance, another thing that I've seen people haven't noticed is, in the previous editions, the support weapons platforms were taken in squads of 1 to 3. But in the new edition, we can see on the other side of the datasheet that the unit composition is 1 support weapon. So now you can still take 3 support weapons as a selection in your army, but each of those selections is only comprised of a single support weapon. As where previously, if you max them out, you could take 3 selections of 3 support weapons. So being able to take 9 of them in your army is substantially stronger than being able to take only 3. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products, including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now back to the video. So at a glance, this is definitely a very strong combo and can be achieved for very few points. But it also uses up a lot of your key selections, a lot of your key resources, and also has some very strong restrictions like the 27-inch range. So this and a couple of other combos are why people are saying that Eldar are broken, and there's actually some tournaments and organizers saying that until the Aeldari are fixed, they're going to ban them from their tournaments. And this is just ridiculous. Sure, it's very strong, and if you fall for it or don't expect it, it could definitely be devastating and a feel-bad moment. But the truth is, it's not that hard to either stay 27 inches away from these things, or to just fly something over, get a sight on it behind cover, and eliminate it. I mean, after all, this thing is toughness 6 with only 5 wounds and a 4-up save. So even small arms fire can easily remove one of these platforms from the game. And with a maximum of 3 of them even being in your army, it's not that hard for your opponent to send a quick sacrificial unit, clear this off the table, and eliminate a threat. So sure, the Farseer is only 65 points, and each of the weapons platforms is only 85 points. So that's 320 points that I would expect to see in most Eldar armies. It's definitely a strong tool that they're going to have at their disposal and something to look out for. But this doesn't make the entire faction broken, nor does it make them unbeatable. And I think for each other crazy combo that you've heard about, there's either a way to play around it, a way to avoid it, kill it, or potentially, if it's too bad, if there's too much outroar from the community, we know Games Workshop is willing to step in, much like we've already seen Games Workshop do on Deathwatch. So naturally, everyone is going to flip open their books and look at their points and look at their rules and immediately been drawn to how things have gotten worse. And every post they see about another faction that they don't play or understand is going to seem like there's some amazing combo. But often the first couple things that kind of catch the community's eye and that people are talking about either don't work as intended, will quickly get nerfed by Games Workshop, or won't even survive the test of time once everyone sees how easily you can avoid it. So rather than getting sucked up in all the negativity, all the internet toxicity, and seeing how a particular army performed on a particular battle report by someone that has very little or no experience with that army, specifically in this edition, because no one really does, let's take a little time, let's put our toy soldiers on the table, push them around and have some fun. And then, if there's still issues in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, let's see how Games Workshop handles it. But from what I've seen so far, from what I've looked at, and from what I've heard, 10th edition is going to be the best edition of Warhammer 40,000 we've ever had. The most fun, the most exciting, the coolest to look at, the most popular. And maybe we'll look back at this a year or 2 or 3 from now and I'll be completely wrong. But for me, 10th edition is a brand new puzzle and we all get to solve it together. So let's have some fun along the way. So I always ask you guys for your opinions down below. So because I am doing a giveaway on this video, please only leave 1 comment per person and make sure you are subscribed, like, and that you give your opinion after you let me know what your favorite faction is. So if you do win, I know what kind of stuff to send you. Make sure you tune in on future videos to find out if you're the winner. Special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the video. That's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man, and I'm staying positive, and I'm cutting out the toxicity, and I'm out of here.